Okay. Well, anyone who's tuning in, it's day 155, and I know it's probably hard to see who's talking. It's me again. It's actually 6:24 a.m., but as usual with my car's clock, it hasn't updated. I don't know if they'll figure it out either how to update it myself or just go off what I got on my phone. But somehow I got out here relatively early. It's kind of interesting. It sounds like I guess a good thing compared to last week where I was peeling out, super late. But it's like usual on Monday. I'm heading into work, and building off what I kind of talked about like last time. I'm hoping for no drama because of asking out the girl last time and all that. But just gonna try and get through this week, and I wrote down in my planner, it's kind of like stuff to do. I'm trying to be a little more sort of reasonable and rational in what I'm expecting myself to be able to do, and I'm focusing more on problem sets as opposed to reading this and reading that. I got all my pre-lecture quizzes done yesterday, so I don't got that to kind of stress about. I can just go to work, do what I gotta do for work, and then go to class. And got homework that's due on Wednesday. And what else? I don't know what else. I feel like things I could probably talk about having to do with I don't know. I got stuff about life or my mental emotional state, but like last night, I did have a kind of difficult time getting to sleep, but I eventually got to sleep, and I had to sort of, I don't know. At first, I was trying to utilize some almost like bedtime story type stuff to get to sleep. But the kind of funny thing is when I started actually drifting out to sleep and I was hearing some of the stories they were playing, because I have to admit I'm kind of like a horror story junkie in some sense, but kind of the stories I was hearing, it was kind of like, okay, I don't know if I want to fall asleep to that kind of story, because it's one thing to be hearing a story about like a monster out in the woods or so. It's another thing to be hearing a story that apparently is turned to be sort of like a murder mystery sort of a thing, and gets kind of gruesome or so. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch out of that. But I eventually did get to sleep, and got a few hours, but I think probably because I slept in on Saturday and Sunday, that's probably why I was able to get up, so early this day and get out to my car. But I have a lot of stuff to do that's predicated on me getting my paycheck on Friday, and there's stuff that I had to sort of slack on, like luckily I did enough laundry last time that I had stuff to wear, but like I'm gonna have to do like a pretty significant load of laundry this Friday or Saturday once I get paid, because I just don't have the cash to be covering the laundry bill right now. So that's kind of on my mind, but I think a couple of things that are on my mind right now have to do with like how I was talking about yesterday about just trying to be content with life, and in all honesty, like anytime I sort of deal with the whole sort of romantic or sort of for lack of a better way of putting it, the kind of like the sexual aspect of life, being in my 30s and kind of like realizing that sort of my scenario, my situation isn't, unfortunately, for my generation, it's not that uncommon. I mean, I'm sure a lot of guys don't want to admit it, and I can relate it to Nofap by bringing up the fact that if you look at the demographics for Nofap, it's kind of like there are far more guys out there in their 20s and 30s who are, PMO addicts, or they suffer from PMO compulsion, and something that we don't really talk about, it would seem, or we kind of like joke, we crack jokes about it, unfortunately, and I don't mean us in the NoFap community, but like, society as a whole, and it kind of says something about like what we as a society consider a problem or something to be concerned about, and like, it says a lot of other things that I think probably could be considered quote unquote controversial or like offensive to certain people, but needless to say, like my situation being in my 30s, and never having had physically intimate relations as a guy who's attracted to women. Obviously some of it is because of that, whole notion of like waiting till marriage and, like sort of my mental, emotional nature, if you will, or maybe like conditioning or something like that. Maybe stuff having to do with upbringing, life experience, that sort of deal. But even for the guys out there who never had this notion of like waiting till marriage, or saving themselves for some special lady or whatever, there's still that sense that it's not really that uncommon, due to numerous factors. And then of course you combine that with the fact that as guys, generally speaking, we have this natural sort of drive towards trying to get with a girl, and when you can't fulfill that because of any variety of reasons, I mean, you could probably boil it down to like, a lot of cases just not knowing how to quote unquote get with a girl, how to express your interest in her, how to escalate, what context to pursue a woman in, what context to not pursue a woman in, etc., etc. Whole plethora of factors, all converging in or producing a scenario where you as a guy can end up in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, even late 30s, and you never got with some woman, even though you had no, what do you want to call it, no sort of compunctions against or reservations against, getting physically intimate with a woman. In fact, you desired it, but you just never accomplished that. And sort of realizing that, in fact, a lot of ways my situation is not that uncommon. Again, even if you factor in the whole like, waiting till marriage versus not waiting till marriage deal, even if you take that out of the equation, and where was I going with this? Well, thinking about that, and sort of considering the fact that with all that's happened in my life in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, like sort of asking myself that question, like how much do I actually want that? Obviously I still do, but at the same time it's just kind of like, again, having to sort of look at the unfortunate reality of the situation and going like, if I were to just end up alone, but I had my finances straightened out, my health, was taken care of, my education was taken care of. And unfortunately, if I ended up being that 40 or 45 or 50-year-old virgin guy who never got with a lady, but I had everything else, and I could walk away from society if I so chose, or I was able to sort of have the kind of career or the kind of life otherwise that I was always wanted, and I had always wanted. Like, would that be enough for me? I know there's always be that nagging sort of desire to have had those kinds of experiences, and I know that if I ever did have that kind of physical intimacy, I'm sure that I'd probably look back with even more regret in my life and wish that I'd basically slept around and gotten after with all the different women who had expressed interest in me down the years, but wondering like what contentment would look like. That's like I guess one of the big things. Other than that, I think I'm also starting to understand how a lot of folks in general, guys in particular, how they end up in such a rundown bad state in life. Because in your 30s, I'd say probably for most of us, we end up in a certain cycle of life where even if you end up getting married, you end up having sex, and if it's like for the first time in your life you're having that, or maybe it's sort of like maybe you've already done that beforehand, you're settling down, whatever the case may be. Maybe you end up getting married, maybe you end up having kids, or maybe you don't, but you somehow end up in a cycle where it's sort of like you're in that rat race, and until or unless you kind of run that gauntlet, get your finances straightened out, don't have to worry about money, get the relationship aspect of your life, sorted out, your psyche sorted out, you work on whatever issues you're not facing, or you have been facing and resolving. I can see how so many guys will end up in sort of a loop in life where they end up, like when you talk about like physical health, packing on lots of weight, getting completely out of shape, and not just out of shape, but even like obese, and ending up, with type 2 diabetes and heart disease, and not being able to live their lives to the fullest, And of course, a lot of it has to do with debt and, mismanaging your finances, and basically, like, for instance, getting into a lot of debt trying to pursue women, or, keep your wife or keep your girlfriend happy, thinking that, you gotta spend all this money to do that, instead of taking a different approach, which might initially be very difficult or challenging, and it might not initially bear fruit, but it's almost like in the long run, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like the question of like, what is happiness, or what does happiness look like, or what is contentment, what does contentment look like? Ironically enough, it might be actually more contentment-inducing or happiness-inducing to take that different approach. And it might not mean being married with those 2 to 3 kids anymore. That era might be over. And I say might be because, partially because, there's still sort of a debate as to like whether or not you can really have that these days. And partially because maybe a bit of me is wanting to hope and pray, so to speak, not literally pray, but metaphorically wants to hope that that's still somehow a possibility. That it's still somehow a possibility. You can somehow get that if you play your cards right. If you sort of figure out how to do that, and even in the face of like all the experience I've had in life, because I'll tell you, like where I'm at, they say that the area I live in is sort of like, this is sort of the future of the country that I live in, and by extension the future of the world. This is like the direction the world is going in, and that's really the case. Like, whether you believe in God or not, or some sort of deity or deities, it's kind of like, expression, God help us, because I only see things getting worse if that's really the case. Where you have sort of a dating market or a relationship market wherein most of us guys are just like, it's almost like we're priced on out, and you combine that with potential extreme negative consequences for trying to engage in that market, because you have this desire, because you're a human being, and because you're, like most guys, you want women, you're desirous of of a woman or multiple women or whatever, just women in general. It just doesn't seem like a great direction things are going in, because it's not like you just have to focus on what you think you'd have to focus on. Like in the past, it was sort of, I think it would make sense, like as to what you thought the other side wanted, what you had to sort of work on and get. Like, okay, I could understand the whole get yourself into great physical shape, look good, stop eating those Twinkies, start eating those vegetables, exercise, make sure you get enough sleep, do what you gotta do to cut that fat off your body, so to speak, burn that fat off your body and get those muscles, make those muscles, figure out what is, decent fashion for a guy in your age bracket, learn to wear the right cologne, maintain your hygiene first and foremost, in that category. Learn social skills, learn how to interact, learn how to tell a good joke, learn what a good joke is, which seems to be nigh impossible these days, because everything's pretty much considered like, what's the expression? It's sort of like, off limits. Yeah, off limits. That's the term. Like, everything's considered pretty much off limits these days. You don't want to crack the wrong joke with the wrong person, because even if they're not in that demographic that the joke is about, like, oh, they'll get offended, and now you're not kosher with them or whatever. You're not okay in their eyes, stuff like that, used to make sense, but then you sort of like, and how does this relate to Nofap? Well, why is it that so many of us guys have this issue, this PMO compulsion or PMO addiction? Because I think a lot of us, it just boils down to the fact that we don't have an outlet for those desires, and like, honestly, like, you try and cope different ways. Obviously, there are folks who have the PMO or Nofap, they're on Nofap because they got a PMO compulsion or addiction because they're coping with some sort of deep trauma in their lives. But But a lot of the trauma honestly just has to do with getting rejected, and not just getting rejected, but getting humiliated for expressing interest in a woman. Then of course there's the category where it's because they had something else bad happen to them, and again they're trying to cope with that because it's sort of a traumatic memory or an experience that they haven't really had any other way of dealing with, or they couldn't find another way of dealing with it. But all these considerations relate to that because it's sort of like, if, for me, among all the other problems I've had in my life, if I were able to somehow figure out how to solve this problem, I think, PMO would become that irrelevant to my life, and as such, another thing to consider is that it's sort of the demographic of females I've been around for so freaking long, for like the last several years in particular. And it's kind of like the thing that I think Aaron Clare was bringing up. One of the things he was bringing up when they asked him about sort of his opinion on the dating market was that you're not just competing against these standards that you got to be in the top 10 or top 20% of guys, which, some people will say, oh, it's not, not that difficult to get to that demographic. But again, you're not just competing against that. You're competing against someone's career or, their sort of, it's almost like their politics, their philosophy. And because of the demographic that you just happen to be born into because of your, whether it's gender, race, religion, your hair color, eye color, whatever, it's stuff that you really can't deal that much about. And ironically enough, in some of those cases, it's sort of like if you weren't born to the demographic, like what women think of you wouldn't really matter, because you wouldn't be in the demographic of people who are concerned with whether or not, a woman is attracted to you or not, or whether or not you got a chance with her or so. But in particular, the area I live in, I mean that's sort of like so much of the name of the game here is like, somehow you as a guy trying to get with a girl, and the girls that you have to sort of compete for or pick from, they just plain and simply don't want you. They don't want you, they don't need you. In the past, it was sort of like if you were a guy who had a decent job or even like a career where you're making a significant amount of money, that could at least serve as a basis for, hey, here's how I'm at least attractive or desirable for something, And it could be that, well, he might not be the best looking or the funniest or the most this or that, but he's got a solid job, and that's not good enough, because in a lot of cases, because of a variety of reasons, and I could probably branch off into some really controversial topics, but because of a variety of reasons, a lot of these girls, they have that already. They have that job. Maybe they even make more than you make, and so that ticket is thrown out the window. You can't be like, well, hey, I make all this money, or I make significant amount more than the girl I'm interested in. Or even if you make more, you probably don't have as high of a status job as she does, or position as she does. Or it's, even if you are higher status or have higher income, it's not that much higher, and she's wanting like a guy who makes 20 or 30 or 50 or 100K more than you, or maybe your politics aren't right, or maybe your religion isn't right, or maybe your hair color, whatever, it's all these things where it's sort of like, because they feel they can do much better than you, And you really have to confront this reality that, you know, in sort of like the terms of sort of like selling a product, like you're a salesman, you're trying to sell the product that's you. It's like what you're selling, they ain't buying it, you know. And somehow learning to sort of live your life in a manner and having sort of the perspective and the means and the ability and the ways of coping with the fact that you're just not gonna really have a chance with or a shot with any of these girls you might want to get with, assuming that they were of that category that you would want to get with them, and that they had all those, you know, traits that you wanted in a woman, and a relationship partner, you know, and the kind of girl you would want, like, in your life. If you don't have that means to cope, I can see how PMO becomes so attractive, so desirable, you know. Though I honestly see it as something that, you know, ultimately can and will sort of cripple you in other aspects of your life. So it's kind of almost like a catch-22, a double-edged sword of like, okay, it helps me cope. I don't gotta feel so, you know, depressive about about the women all the time because I'm not really thinking about it as much because I'll just go and, you know, PMO. But at the same time, like, the desire's still there. You still want that juice, and it ends up affecting other aspects of your life. Like, you get these side effects of social anxiety and just, you know, mismanaged time and, you know, all the things that come from mismanaging your time. And also even like physical pain, which I could probably get into that in another video, because I know I've been talking about sometimes having some, you know, muscle pain here and there in my body, and I've oftentimes wondered if it's really just a side effect of having, you know, FAP for so long, and maybe if I do enough, you know, no FAP, I basically abstain from this, my body will sort of heal itself, you know. But anywho, I'm here at work. I got here about 10 minutes early, as it turns out, and I don't think it's a holiday or anything. There's not that many people here, but excuse me. Anyways, just gonna finish recording, upload this, go in and, you know, start my day, and just a lot of food for thought. Try not to be angry or frustrated with the way the world is, and try not to be angry or frustrated with my state in life. And just trying to make the most of my days, so that hopefully, assuming there's no negative fallout, for instance, from asking out the girl last week or anything else, that I can just get on with my day, with my life, and, you know, pay off all my debts, get a decent final grade in my class, and you know, just continue that whole process of moving forward towards the big goals I have in my life that I'm having to sort of make, you know, these goals, and make them reasonable and adjust them to the context within which I live, which means a lot of times that I'm just not going to get what I want or what I wanted or desired out of life, and I'll have to somehow be content with that. So, whilst also not selling myself short, obviously. So anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks to those who, you know, still follow my channel. So, you know, thanks to you folks for watching, and take it easy. Bye-bye.